Okay, so good evening, everybody. Tonight we have with us Dr. Chastity Murray, and she's going to be providing us with some information about her role in the district. A couple of years ago, we had the good fortune of being able to hire for a district-wide behavior specialist, and we had lots of applicants, and Dr. Murray rose to the top of somebody that we definitely wanted to bring on staff to the PPS department into the district. And since that time, she's really become an asset to the district and a wealth of knowledge across our 6 buildings. And so we've asked her to come here tonight to talk to us a little bit about her role, because it is unique to have a behavior specialist on staff in a district, and then to give us any suggestions that she can about behavior and behavioral support. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Murray.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for allowing me to join you on your call today. I'm going to first go ahead and share my screen, and then I'll share a little bit about myself and some background before getting into describing my role within the district and how I help support staff and students. So 1 second. Okay. So hopefully everyone is able to see the PowerPoint. If you're not, then let me know. So as Jason already sort of explained, this role in the district was newly developed when I applied and joined the team at Gates. And so the beauty in that it was a newly developed position is that it has really allowed for flexibility in how I am utilized to help support various needs in the district. Like Adam, I support all 6 buildings. So I do travel a lot between site to site. I do have office space in both the high school and the middle school, but a lot of my time primarily is spent in many of the buildings within the district. So I'm often not in one of those office spaces because I spend a lot of time in classrooms or meeting with teams as a way to help support the needs of the students in the district. So a little bit of background about myself. I'll start with who I am. I am someone who has come to working within this district with a variety of different previous experiences. I spent time working in a substance abuse facility capacity prior to coming into the school realm, where I was a substance abuse prevention counselor. I worked with individuals who had substance use disorders, mental health disorders, individuals with domestic violence perpetrators in their history. So I came into the school system kind of in a very indirect way. Most people go into teaching and right away from completing their degree, jump right into the school realm. I actually went into the treatment realm. And then I sort of circumvented and went back into the school realm where I was working at a local high school in the Rochester City School District, providing psychoeducation and substance abuse prevention counseling for students in a high school that was primarily based around just spreading knowledge around substance use and how to avoid getting into the treatment arena. Once I transitioned into that work, I did a lot of work with teams in schools. And so by doing so, I met a lot of great individuals in the mental health profession, primarily school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers, that were also helping to support student needs outside of just the classroom teachers and classroom supports. So in doing that work and partnering and collaborating with those teams, I became very interested in learning more about like how students learn best. Like what are some of the things that either are assets and help students achieve and help them grow, or what are some of the things that we as educators can help to either impact or affect as a way to meet some of the needs that students present with to help them become more successful academically. In that realm, I decided to return to school and got a second master's. That time was in school psychology. And so through that work led me to working for a BOCES program through BOCES 2, where I did a lot of work supporting students with significant behavioral needs, supporting students on the autism spectrum, supporting students who were medically fragile. So I was allowed the opportunity to work with a variety of different students, a variety of different teams. And being at BOCES, you often get to see many different schools and how they function, how they build supports around students. And so I took all of that knowledge in my work in BOCES and decided to really hone my focus on supporting students' behavioral needs. And the reason that I felt that was so significant was because I saw in my work at BOCES how impactful students' behaviors could be to their overall educational progress. And a lot of times in my work in learning students and working with different teams, I learned that it really came from sort of a breakdown in communication. The student was trying to communicate something to us as their educational team about something that they needed. And we had to sort of put the puzzle together to figure out what it was that they were communicating. And once we did find that piece, we were then able to help them achieve academic success because we were able to meet those underlying needs. That idea really sparked a desire to learn more about just how behavior can impact achievement. And that led me to return to school where I pursued a doctorate in executive leadership. And I wrote my dissertation focusing around understanding behaviors and the impact of student behaviors and how staff can help support those behavioral needs to help them to become successful. Because when we all get into education, the goal is to help build successful adults. And so in order to do that, we really have to understand what these students are telling us in order to help them to achieve that goal. So that's a little bit about who I am and sort of what led me to the role that I'm currently in. As far as the what, um, the role that I perform at the district is very unique in the sense that it's not designed as a student support, it's really designed as a staff support. And it functions on a consultation based model where essentially I go in and meet with either individual teachers or meet with teams of teachers who are expressing concerns about a student's behavior. And I really try to help them pick out the pieces to figure out what exactly is the student trying to communicate through their behavior. And in doing so, the goal is ultimately to help the staff person change up their approach, maybe make some adjustments or modifications in the environment in order to help to alleviate whatever that underlying concern or need is that the student is communicating to us through their behavior. So I do a lot of training tailored around understanding behavior, around ways to change up our approaches when we are working with students of different abilities in order to help to really get a sense of what that student needs so that we as the adults in the room can help to provide that for them so that they can have a successful school experience. The win, as far as the background, is really designed around, when am I interacting with people? When am I interacting with staff? And it's really all the time. Because of the design of my position, I really am able to, go from maybe meeting at an elementary building where I'm doing a training before students arrive in the morning to then going to maybe the middle school where I'm doing an observation of a student and then consulting with a team member or a individual teacher around what was seen during that observation to help when it comes to designing interventions and building supports for students to help them to be successful. So the win really occurs in whatever places and contexts are needed, whether that is putting trainings together, completing individual observations, completing individual or team consultations. I really try to be very versatile and very flexible in meeting the needs of the staff to help them with meeting the needs of the students that they support on a day-to-day basis. And that also sort of led into the where. As I mentioned in the very beginning of my conversation, I support all 6 buildings of the district. So there are definitely times where I am going from one site to another and then back to another or back to the previous site. With this new virtual realm and being able to do meetings virtually, there's a little bit less of the back and forth travel, but I definitely like to try to put, sort of boots to the ground and get into the buildings as much as possible, because I think that it is helpful to be able to see students in their element in order to provide guidance around how to support them in the context that it's needed. And if anyone has questions while I'm talking, please don't hesitate to interrupt. I'd be happy to, take questions at any point. So as far as the background, that was really in a nutshell who I am, how I came to be in this role, and the way that I sort of approach my work in helping to support staff and students in the district. One of the methods that's sort of a foundational guide for my support are designed around this idea of multi-tiered systems of supports. Essentially, research base shows that when we're providing supports, whether it's academic or behavioral, there needs to be some differentiation in the way that we support and approach different students based on their needs, based on their capabilities. And we should be having, a really collaborative and continuous approach to how we are meeting these students' needs. And when I talk about collaborative, I'm not just meaning the individual adults that are in the building working with the students, but talking with parents as well throughout the process on getting to know their child and what works and what doesn't work for them, what things motivate them to help them to make progress, and what things might be counterproductive as strategies when trying to implement changes or provide new learning opportunities. So the multi-tiered system of supports really starts out with this idea of, this tiered level of types of intervention approaches. The first being tier 1, which is essentially the things that are provided just classroom-wide, building-wide, things that are offered and available for all students, regardless of their need. And then when we have students who present with, additional needs beyond whatever those universal or tier 1 level supports are, then we look at moving up to that more targeted or tier 2 level. And essentially at that space, we may be looking at, a smaller group of students who need a little bit more additional instruction around how to address or support them in a particular type of task, or if it's a particular setting that they may be having difficulty with. And so really looking at what are some additional pieces that we as staff can put into place to help them to be as successful as possible. And then when we move up to that final or third tier, that's really looking at more of that intensive level of support. So essentially, those students who are demonstrating that they need something that's a bit more individualized in order to help them to be successful, then we'd be looking at, how can we make adjustments or modifications to their day, to their schedule, to the type of tasks that we're presenting to them to help them to be as successful as possible. What are some things that we need to make sure we're providing or adjusting in order to make this a seamless transition for them? And that could be in the realm of academics or behavior. So, maybe they might need some sort of incentive program that will be specifically tailored to them to help keep them motivated and engaged in an academic setting so that they can be successful with completing the various types of academic tasks. So when we look at it from a behavior perspective, because as I mentioned, this tiered system of supports can be utilized in an academic realm or in a behavioral realm. When we think of tier 1, we're thinking of those classroom-wide behavior management systems. Tier 2, we will be thinking of those smaller group interventions. What are some things that we maybe are offering or providing for those few students who seem to still need additional guidance around being able to maintain their behavior in an appropriate way within the classroom or the school building. And then that third tier is where we do those more individualized plans. So we'd be looking at things like functional behavior assessments or behavior intervention plans. We'd be doing things like tracking their data and progress monitoring. And although data tracking is listed in that top or third tier, we really are doing that throughout each level, right? We're constantly sort of assessing what's working and what's not working for students based on how they're presenting to us. And that's going to occur at all tiers within this multi-tiered system of support. So that's a very brief sort of explanation of my approach and what I am sort of using as my foundation for helping to support staff within the district as they work to support students. At this point, I think I'll end the PowerPoint so I can see everyone's face and see if there is anyone who has any questions for me, anything about what I shared in the presentation or any other general questions about my role in the district.
I have one.
Yes.
So your services get initiated through the SBIT process or the CSC IEP process or just a teacher request? Like how formal does it need to be or at what point does it become formal?
So my services are, because it's district-based, it's really off of a teacher reaching out saying, I would like to have a conversation with you about what I'm seeing in my classroom. And it starts out very, very informal. There's no like required forms or paperwork that needs to be filled out in order for the teacher to initiate that conversation. And where it starts to move to something more formalized is if we were looking at a student who is classified and we may be considering completing a functional behavior assessment and then developing a behavior intervention plan.
Can I just interject some of those acronyms? So you said SBIT, and that stands for School-Based Intervention Team. Is that right?
Correct.
CSE stands for Committee on Special Education, and IEP, Individualized Education Plan. Did I miss anything? Okay, just wanted to put it out there for the folks at home watching the recording. And I have a question.
Yeah.
How often do students how do they move through those tiers, or is it at the request of the parent of the teacher, or is it a collaboration, it's a discussion? Are they in for a year, 2? How does that work?
So it's a sort of a ongoing and fluid process, right? So it depends on what the student's showing in their current level of need. If they are able to demonstrate success at the first tier where they are, just being sort of provided the general classroom-wide behavior management supports, then there's no need to progress any further. If they are showing that, it's a particular time of year and they're struggling and demonstrating that they need additional supports, then the team would continue to be assessing. As I mentioned, it's an ongoing assessment process where we're sort of looking at what the student needs. And so we would aim to provide that for them at that time. If they start to show success at that level, of course, we're always working towards a level of independence. So we start to pull back some of those more targeted supports and hoping that they are able to self-regulate and demonstrate that they are able to be successful at, you know, that same tier 1 level as they were before. If they demonstrate that they need that support again, we again would reintroduce whatever types of strategies or interventions we needed to in order to help them to be successful at, you know, whatever their individual need level is. So it's not a regimented time frame. It's really based on the student and what they are displaying that their needs are at the time. Any other questions?
How long have you been in the district then? Has it been a year, or I can't remember?
I've been at the district for 3 years.
It's been 3. So,
yes.
But new this year in this specific role?
No, I've been in the district as a district behavior specialist for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's great to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
And this role is unique, like you said?
Yes. So prior to me coming into this position, the district has never had a district-based behavior specialist. Whenever a specialist level support was needed, it was often contracted through BOCES program.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I know you said you work with the teachers directly, but can parents request that you interact with a teacher?
Yes. So if you have a concern or a question, or if the teacher is reporting some sort of concern, you can always ask them if they have connected with me, or if they haven't, then you could definitely ask them to reach out.
Has your role evolved over the last 3 years? And kind of what, if so, like how has that been, and where do you see it kind of moving forward?
So yes, it has definitely evolved, really sort of based on what the needs of the district have sort of been. When I initially started my first year, I was hired specifically to target reducing the suspension rates for students who were classified. And so we were looking specifically at supporting students who were classified in my first year. The second year, it sort of opened up so that I was able to support all students, whether they were classified or not. And I also was able to provide more staff trainings at things like superintendent's conference days, new staff orientation, providing in-services throughout the school year that are offered to all staff, whether they are teaching staff or support staff in the district. And then this year, I'm doing those things as well that I was doing during that second year, but I'm also focusing a lot of my time on supporting teams with developing functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans, and really getting a better handle on data collection around those student behaviors in order to be able to better develop programs and interventions and supports to meet the student needs. And as far as where I see things going, I think it will continue to be based on the needs that are presented in the district. So as we sort of recap the school year and determine what areas we found either we could use additional trainings or supports in, or you know, what types of skill sets we feel that our staff needs additional help with, then I will work to sort of design and tailor my role around filling that gap.
And I'll add to that Dr. Murray does a wonderful job of keeping data about where she spends her time, who she spends her time supporting, and what type of behaviors she's supporting. So at the end of the year, we'll usually sit down and have a conversation, and she presents all of this data to me. And then she really does start to think about, based on where I've been spending a lot of my time, who I've been supporting, and especially what type of behaviors seem to be most prevalent. That's how I'm going to target training over the summer and for the upcoming school year, which has been extremely helpful for us to be proactive in the way that we approach things.
Any other questions?
I have a comment. I work with Dr. Murray in coordination with my services as autism consultant often. And one, I think, unique perspective about Chastity's job is oftentimes she does observations of students and student behaviors in real time in the classrooms with staff that are possibly struggling with students or possibly not seeing what we need. And I think Chastity has provided some unique insight, being an objective observer, someone who's new to the situation or newer or not living and breathing it every day, I think provides some salient information about what to do with the behavior. Oftentimes we're involved in the behavioral situations that occur on a pretty regular basis. So having someone like Dr. Murray come in and just, like I said, be an objective observer and really looking at both the students' behaviors and our behaviors sometimes unearths information that we wouldn't otherwise be able to kind of come to a conclusion. In one particular situation, Dr. Murray and I were able to just, in coordination with one another, really just understand the function of a behavior in a very different light. And so I just think she's a unique role, but also one that is super helpful in really unearthing and determining why certain behaviors are happening in the classroom. And she's just been a great asset to a lot of our different teams.
Thank you for saying that, Adam. I appreciate it. I did not pay him to say that.
Well, you've never met me, and I'm about to say the same thing. It clearly is such a valuable position, because when districts contract with an outside provider for that type of support, so often you have scheduled meetings. They'll be there April 15th. And so you collect all the fires that happen, and they come in and you hand them the ashes and then try to talk about how to get started. How long did the fire last? Was there smoke afterwards? And it's so hard to go back and reflect in such a learning way for that, because the fire's been put out now. I needed you, in the heat of the moment or shortly after when I could reflect. So the fact that you do have your boots on the ground and you're so familiar has to be extremely valuable to the classrooms and the students. So and thank you for sharing your time.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I will share that we are going to have more of an informal meetup for staff, teachers, community members, parents, caregivers on March 25th at 7 p.m. And then in April, we will have Mr. Adam Mattice presenting about autism. The date is to be determined. But thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
And those will be virtual, correct, Kelly?
Yeah.
Those will still be via Skype.
Yes, unless something drastic happens now till then. But thank you, Dr. Murray. This was really wonderful for all of us. And so this was recorded. It will be uploaded to our Septo YouTube channel that we have, and can be shared with anybody that you think it would be relevant for. I'm going to stop.